Okay, hi guys. Let's get to special senses. This is the last chapter that we have to cover for this unit. So what are we looking at? We're looking at the special senses. Olfaction, gustation, which is taste, olfaction was smell, vision is vision, equilibrium and hearing are actually off the same cranial nerve. So first question I have is what cranial nerves are associated with the special senses and what locations do these nerves associate with? So in terms of what cranial nerves. What cranial nerve is this? Cranial nerve 1. That one's easy. What is this for taste? Um, this one, or let's go to vision. What cranial nerve is associated with vision? Cranial nerve 2. What about taste? Well, taste has two different components to it. We're going to keep it very simple and pretty straightforward. So the tongue is divided into the front and the back. And we'll cover this again when we see it on the PowerPoint slides. But the anterior two-thirds of the tongue, that guy is what we consider to be cranial nerve 7. So you can remember this by saying, that's a part of facial expression, right? And then the posterior one-third of the tongue is controlled by cranial nerve 9. And how do you remember that? Well, gag reflex, right? So glossopharyngeal is associated with cranial nerve 9, the posterior one-third of the tongue. And then you also have cranial nerve 10, which was vagus, right? That is associated with the throat, but we're going to stick to 7 and 9, two-thirds and one-third. And then when we cover the different taste types, then we'll talk about where they're relatively located. It just depends on your school of thought where they located. A lot of people will say, oh, it's throughout evenly, but some others will reference it on specific locations, just a higher sensitivity to the particular flavors. And what else do we have? So we did cranial nerve 1, cranial nerve 2, this was 7 and 9. So we have cranial nerve number 8 left over. And we'll cover this more specifically as we go through the PowerPoints, right? So 1, 2, 7, 9, and number 8. 8 has two branches. What were the two branches called again? Number 8 has the vestibule. So they call it vestibulocochlear, right? So vestibule is a part of equilibrium. And cochlea, or the cochlear branch, vestibulocochlear, cranial nerve number 8, is associated with hearing. So same cranial nerve, just different types of sensations that you're dealing with. And then, of course, we already know this, right? Look, what locations do these nerves associate with? I could ask origin locations, right? So I have midbrain, pons, medulla. Midbrain was 3, 4. Pons was 5, 6, 7, 8. Who do we appreciate? Pons. Pons. Yay, pons. And then we have 9, 10, 11, 12 is a part of the medulla. So if I do ask those questions like, where do these cranial nerves originate from? Then you guys already know what the answers are. It's either midbrain, pons, medulla, but we said cranial nerve 1 and 2 are extensions directly off the big brain, also known as the cerebrum. So olfactory, we'll keep this as simple as possible. I just want you to know that olfactory references cranial nerve 1, and it passes through these holes that are found in this bone. Can anybody remember what the name of the holes are? So I grab a baby, and then I put them in a crib. So what am I doing? I'm smelling a baby, and they're in a crib. So what is the name of the plate that the holes pass through? It's the cribriform plate of, this represents the 3, right? It looks like an E. So what bone was it that it passes through? The ethmoid bone. That's all review from a couple of chapters ago with bones. And that's really all I want to ask you guys for this. You can review the rest of it, but primarily you need to know cranial nerve number 1. It's called olfactory. The olfactory nerves pass through holes that are found in the cribriform plate, which is a part of the ethmoid bone. So let's talk about gustation. What is gustation? Well, we just went over the tongue, right? So gustation is just referring to taste and taste buds. There's 3 different shapes that you would find in the tongue. One are little circles and they make a V, so I just remember them as circumvallate papillae because there's a V in there. Circumvallate, circles, and the valley has a V. And then there is fungiform here, right? Fungus, so it looks like a mushroom. And then there's filiform. It looks like a filament on a light bulb. So if you look at some of the fancy light bulbs, here's what we're going to take a look at the forms first. So filiform, it looks like a light, right? Or fire or a flame. So this is filiform. This is fungiform. And then this is circumvallate papillae. So let's take a look at what circumvallate is. This is circumvallate papillae. It makes a little V shape on your tongue. The anterior 2/3 of the tongue is controlled by what cranial nerve? Cranial nerve 7 is also known as facial. And then what about the posterior 1/3? Posterior 1/3 is controlled by the cranial nerve 9, and that is also known as glossopharyngeal. So let's go over some of these flavors. And here's a mnemonic to help you remember them. Waob, umami. So it's waob, umami. So you can kind of do this, W-A-O-B and umami. And what does that mean? Well, W is sweet, and then A is salty, O is sour, and B is not so bitter. It's just bitter. So sweet, salty, sour, bitter. Bitter is usually right about this area. And why do you think bitter, the sensation of bitter, would be at the back of the tongue? Well, if you eat something, let's say you're hiking on a trail, and then you pick up a berry and you're like, oh, I'm so hungry, I need to eat my berry, the berries that are on the trail, and you put the berry in your mouth and all of a sudden you taste this bitter flavor. What does that signify? Typically it signifies that you're eating poison. So what do you do to it? You spit it out. So it's almost like a preventive thing. It's in the back of the throat. So before it actually gets into your system, you spit it out because you sense bitter. And then umami. What is umami? U-M-A-M-I is the Japanese word, and it describes a savory, meater is not a word, a savory, meaty flavor, and that's what umami is referencing. So circumvallate papillae help to distinguish or demarcate the anterior 2/3 from the posterior 1/3. Anterior 2/3 controlled by cranial nerve 7, facial, posterior 1/3, cranial nerve 9, glossopharyngeal, and then we have flavors sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. So again, anterior 2/3, you guys can answer that. What controls it? You can ask sensations. And then posterior 1/3, what controls it? What are the sensations? And like I said, school of thought is a little bit different depending on the person that's writing the textbook. But for a class, just remember waob, and we're going to reference bitter in this area. Okay, and then umami, savory, salty, along these lines. So now you know description. Circumvallate makes the V. Fungiform looks like a mushroom. Filiform has this type of shape to it. And then here's your taste buds. So your taste buds are going to be found in between. And they are sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. Additional human taste. Okay, so we're not going to go any further than that when it comes to the taste. But when we get to the eye, that's a different story.